America's healthcare advocate, Kerry Hall.
Hello, America. Welcome to America's Healthcare Advocate Show, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA. My producer, Mr. Darren Wilhite. I'm your host, Kerry Hall. This is your show. Thank you for joining us and making us one of the most listened to talk shows throughout the United States. We are on 12 podcast channels on YouTube now. So when I say one of the most listened to talk shows, that doesn't include all 200 plus radio stations we are on. That's just the podcast channels and the YouTube. And so here's what's happened as a result of all you in this listening audience. The last time we measured a 28-day period, we had 88,189 of you download a podcast. We were absolutely floored with the number of you that are taking these on the podcast platform. So we appreciate you out there. We're on, as I said, 12 podcast platforms. So I don't think there's one out there we're not on. So you can certainly find us anytime on any of those podcast platforms. These shows are all videotaped now, and they're posted on YouTube and on the podcast platforms, in addition to being on all the radio stations around the country. So once again, we really appreciate you. You can follow me on Facebook or Instagram at America's Healthcare Advocate. That's America's Healthcare Advocate. That's also what the podcast platforms, that's the easiest way to find me on podcast platforms. So this is a show we've been trying to get lined up for some time, and we finally got it done. I think we had tried to do this for like 2 or 3 months at least, DJ and Michael, but here we are today. So today my guests are DJ Schmidt, CEO and founder of Neuro20, and Michael Finkelstein, co-founder and president of Neuro20. So we're going to talk about the Neuro20 suit today and what it does, and the history of this, and this show centers around rehabilitation and how this works, the neuromuscular therapy, injuries and disease that people wind up with, and how this suit can literally bring you back. And the real life story behind this is the guy sitting on the screen right there in the collared shirt. Okay, that is DJ Smith. He is a former recon Marine, did a lot of tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, came home with a lot of injuries, and it was out of that necessity for him to get back to where he is today. And if you look at him today, he's probably healthier than I am. I wouldn't doubt that a bit. And out of that grew Neuro20. So let's just go, if we can, a little bit here about these two. So DJ was a disabled veteran. He went on a journey to discover a way to recover from multiple injuries received while he served his country. After many years of travel and research, he discovered electromuscular stimulation. He was surprised by the amount of research on EMS already existed, but couldn't understand why it was not being utilized in a wider variety of applications. So we're going to, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And out of that, he came together with Michael Finkelstein, who is his partner. Michael has worked with medical providers and universities for the past 5 years to develop muscle stimulation. You'd think I did radio. Applications for EMS products in physical rehabilitation fields and human performance. He has 19 years of experience in public administration and research, including a graduate level grant writing, which he also does. He has a BA from Binghamton University and 2 graduate degrees in additional graduate certificates, including Parsons School of Design. So you got 2 very experienced guys that came together for different reasons and put this together. DJ, a little bit about your history. You were, as I said, a recon Marine. You did tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, and then you were a private contractor as well. Talk a little bit about when you were done with all of that, what shape you were in and what you were dealing with from a rehab and therapy standpoint.
So first of all, thank you for having us on. I appreciate it. The electromuscle stimulation field has been around forever. I had multiple injuries over the course of my career. Disabled Marine, 50% disabled. I continued my service overseas working as a private contractor for multiple government agencies where I sustained more injuries, or it got to the point where I wasn't able to function. I was walking, with limitations. I slept on the floor. I couldn't even sleep in the bed. I got up to 260 pounds, and I had an option of taking opioids and being dazed and confused, or not taking opioids and being in so much pain nobody wanted to be around me because I was just evil and mean when it came down to it, because I had to deal with pain every day. I traveled the world. When I got done, I couldn't do the security work anymore. I became an entrepreneur. I opened up a couple of defense contracting companies overseas. and sold that. And in the course, I traveled the world, everywhere from going to China and doing Japan, going to the original cryotherapy machine, blood flow restriction, India for that, China, living in a Shaolin temple. Well, outside the Shaolin temple, I wasn't allowed to live in it, but I would go there every morning for treatments, trying to make something. I had a son. I was limited. I couldn't do anything. He was just born. I wanted to experience life with him, so I made it my life's mission to make myself better. I wasn't accepting that there was no way to make myself better. And after years of traveling, I came across EMS over in Europe as they were using it as a fitness device. I put it on. The impact, or I should say the impact on my life was great because there was no impact on my joints, ligaments, and tendons. That's all I knew, is there was a way for me to contract my muscles and start building them again without the additional impact of regular traditional weights and resistance bands. And that provided me some relief. Started getting involved with multiple EMS companies. And, none of them wanted to go into the medical field. There were 40,000 studies on electrical muscle stimulation. I had an electrical engineering degree, and I ignored electrical muscle stimulation from what I knew about it here in the U.S. The ab buster things that you lay on a couch and get a six-pack, the little handheld machines. But there was so much science. I had to get involved. I put together an amazing team. Mike was the first one that believed in it because he's seen what it did for me.
Yeah.
So Mike, take it from there. I mean, you guys came together with an idea.
Okay,
I look at people like you that do things like this, that are entrepreneurs and invent things like this. And there's an interesting side story, and I'll relate this back to you in a second. The guy that invented the Dyson ball vacuum cleaner out of England, do you know how many times he had to make that device before he found one that worked? 5,429 times he had
Sounds
to reinvent.
about right.
So now I'm going to ask you, how many times do you guys have to remake the Neuro 20 suit before? Because this isn't like, I woke up today and I think I'm going to put it together. This is a trial and error process, and it takes a hell of a lot of determination to be able to come away with something that works as well as what you do, which, by the way, congratulations, is now an FDA-approved device across the country. We'll talk more about that. So talk a little bit about how you two came together to make Neuro 20 as we see in the background there.
Well, like you just said, the vacuum cleaner certainly existed, but the Dyson saw a way of making it better. He decided that, when he saw that vacuum cleaner, he said, I can engineer this and make it better. And that's exactly what DJ did. So what happened was I was good friends with DJ, and I knew him when he was suffering from injuries and he was in pain. And, our children were very good friends. And one day he tells me that he's moving away and he's going to retire in Mallorca and he's going to buy a bar with a sliding chair.
Is that every retired Marine and police officer and first responder's dream is to buy the bar? I don't know about Mallorca, but is that every, how many times have I heard that? DJ?
Yeah, for me, it was just I didn't have an option. I couldn't do anything else. I couldn't move. It was hard for me to walk. It was hard for me to lay down and sleep. I was constantly in pain. It was a way for me to sit in a chair and do something. I was too young to do anything.
And he doesn't drink.
There you go. Yeah.
I didn't have to worry about drinking my profits away.
There you go.
Drink his profit. Smart business.
1 minute.
So long story short, he moves away, and it's very sad for my family and I. He's gone, and his wife, beautiful, they were gone, and his child. And then one day, about a year and a half later, he comes knocking on my door, and he's walking, and he looks great. And I'm like, what is going on? And he started telling me about what he's doing in EMS, and he had me try a suit, and I put it on. I had 2 microlumbar disectomies, and it worked for me. It made me feel great. And so I basically said, hey, can I please do this with you? And walked away from a 20-year career to start a new career. And 7 years later, here we are.
Yeah, and that is, it's a remarkable story how the two of you came together. It's remarkable. And we're going to get into this. And next time we'll talk about, what happened once they put the suit together, how has it worked, and who have they used it with, and we're going to talk about all of that when we come back from the break. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate, broadcasting here on the HI Radio Network, coast to coast across the USA. If you want to learn more about this, go to the website neurologic.life, neurologic.life. All the information on the Neuro 20 is up there. Folks there will be happy to help you, reach out to you, give you a demonstration, whatever the case may be. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after the break. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate, broadcasting here on the HIA Radio Network, coast to coast across the USA. We've got more. Don't go anywhere.
The Golden Rule. Treat others as you want to be treated. I'm Steve Keeker, and this is one of the founding principles of my firm, Senior Care Consulting. Since 2002, our value statement has included honor our mother and father, respect our elders, care for those in need, and treat your family as our own. We've been honored to help hundreds of families make one of the most difficult decisions they could ever make, serving them in their greatest time of need. If you're looking for someone who can provide you experienced and objective guidance when searching for a senior care community, reach out today and discover the services of Senior Care Consulting at 913-945-2800, 913-945-2800. Know your options and choose with care at seniorcareconsulting.com.
Welcome back. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate Show, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA here on the HIA Radio Network. If you find out more about us, you can do that by going to the website americashealthcareadvocate.com. Like I said in the opening, the show is posted on 12 different podcast platforms and YouTube. So you listening to this today about this suit, about the Neuro 20, maybe you know somebody that's having problems going through a rehab. Maybe they had a stroke. Maybe they've got Parkinson's. Maybe they were in an accident. Whatever the case may be, it would behoove you to take time to go look at this. And the website to do that on is neurologic.life, neurologic.life. And that's spelled Neuro, by the way, neurologic.life. Joining me today from, I think you guys are in Florida, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, sunny Florida. It's not quite that sunny here in Kansas today. Our DJ Schmidt, he is the CEO and founder of Neuro 20, and Michael Finkelstein, he is the co-founder and president of Neuro 20. We're talking about this suit, what it does. You heard a little bit about the journey of how they got here, what DJ went through, and where he's at today, and he credits Neuro 20 for making that happen. And you heard Michael talk about the same thing and the fact that he has used the suit and how it's helped him. So let's just start out with a little bit of the suit history itself, and then let's go from there.
Overseas, they had, when I first tried EMS, it was a vested system with cables that hooked to a machine. You had to share the vest with other people. It wasn't very hygienic, as far as I was concerned. We went and we worked out a model, and this is the suit. I'm holding it up. So everybody can get their own individual suit. It's machine washable. It has pre-placed electrodes in it, 20 electrodes that cover different muscle groups with really large size electrodes. They're designed to contour the muscles and cover the muscles, as much muscle as possible, because electrical muscle stimulation doesn't actually stimulate the muscle directly. It activates the motor neurons in the muscle to contract them. So by covering, your traditional EMSs are little patches, 2 inches by 2 inches. So we've contoured them to activate as many muscles as possible. Not only that, the intensity on the large muscle, electricity flows until it dissipates. So you'll see it down into your knees, the peroneal nerve, the fast twitch muscle in the joints. You'll see those twitching that are not covered directly by the electrodes.
So that suit, Michael, you just held up there, that was the inside of the suit. And those are the silver, that's actual silver, isn't it? That's in there?
Yeah, there's silver flaking, right?
Yeah,
26%, which meets the antimicrobial and antibacterial standards by the FDA.
Yeah, so the easiest way to visualize this for all you West Coasters out there and people in Florida that surf, it's like a wetsuit. Okay, that's the easiest way to describe what it looks like. Okay, my wife has one. It looks like a wetsuit. All right, so and it's simple to put on. You heard DJ say it's machine washable. So after you use it, if you sweat, whatever the case may be, you can wash the thing and go back and use it. But now let's go back to electromuscular stimulation. That acronym he uses, EMS. That's what that stands for, folks. Just so you know what we're talking about. So let's go back through that and talk about now how you isolate let's start with Michael. Michael, that back injury you had. Let's talk about how you can take that suit now. If you got the little box there, DJ, you can show the computer. That's it right there. That's the whole.
It's right here.
Yeah, there you go. That's what it looks like. That's about the size of a large pack of cigarettes back in the day when they made cigarettes. But having said that, so talk about how you use that for your back injury and what a difference it made, Michael.
Absolutely. So basically, when you're wearing a suit like this, you can isolate the area of the injury, right, where you can stimulate that area, contract the muscle and release it. Or you can also do all of the compensatory muscles. So how important is it when you're healing for a back injury that your abs and your core stays strong, or you have full mobility in your arm? And if you think about it, anybody who's ever thrown out their back will know this. As soon as your back pulls in one direction, the other muscles start guarding against it, right? They all start pulling. Right, and so one of our indications of use, of our many indications of use from the FDA, is to relieve that muscle guarding, those muscle spasms. So now you can treat the area that's injured and treat the muscle guarding in the other areas. And so that gives you a range of mobility where you can start moving again. And now the rest of your body's still getting healthy.
Okay, so let's go back to something you said there. And this is something we frequently hear from athletes and other people, muscle spasms. So now you've injured your back, and I've had back injuries. Now, I do yoga and Pilates, and the whole focus of Pilates is on the core, like you just mentioned here. Okay, so talk about this muscle spasm thing and how utilizing the suit gets rid of the muscle spasms and then lets you rebuild that core.
What happens is you have an injured area. So what happens is when you have that injured area, your body will start compensating and distributing weight to different areas, but the body's not used to moving that way, and that's what causes the muscles to start spasm, because they're not being used in the proper way that the body is designed to be used. So what you can do is not only focus on the injured area, the compensatory muscles, basically the muscles that support the other movements, because every muscle has a compensatory muscle that you have your concentric and eccentric motion, and this takes those muscles, stimulates them, keeps them stabilized, so that while you're doing the functional exercise in the injured area, it's maintaining the muscles and keeping them in a form that they're supposed to be in.
Okay, right. So Michael, now you held up the little box. That's the actual computer. We got about 2 minutes left here. Let's talk about that and how that allows you to program this, that if you only want to do the muscles around your back, or if you only want to do the muscles in your upper leg, talk about how you can individually program that to do any kind of rehab you need to do with the suit. Michael?
Okay, so basically this talks to an iPad, 100-meter range, Bluetooth. And on the iPad is a software where you can click on any muscle group and add stimulation or decrease stimulation to that area. Or you can click them all and bring them all up or down. And you can do it for up to 10 patients at a time with individual control for each 10 patients for each muscle group within a 100-meter range. So you can do all kinds of movements. You can also do pattern stim, which we can get into after.
So I want to go back to that, though. It's important to understand. So you're a therapist, or you're a doctor, or whatever the case, or a chiropractor, whatever the case may be. You've got a patient. You can actually put this suit on that patient, and you can go to that specific muscle group using the iPad format off of that computer that's clicked on the side of the suit, and you can isolate that and treat that with the Neuro 20. Correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
And the beauty is isolating the other muscles and stopping. Usually when you're injured, what happens is you have disuse atrophy. Right. That means the muscle starts to weaken because you're not using it. This is a way, like for spinal fusion surgery recovery, they can't do anything for 3 months. We can contract the muscle without the impact on the ligaments, tendons, and joints to maintain that muscle. So when they go back to recovering, they're only recovering from the surgical area because we maintain the rest of the body during the recovery process.
That's amazing. And the other muscles didn't atrophy because they weren't getting any stimulation during that time period. All right.
That's another indication of use, reduction of atrophy.
So we're coming up on the break here. If you want information, look, you can buy this as an individual, and you'll get training on how to use it. It's not rocket science, people. So if you're someone that's, maybe you've got somebody, like I said, with Parkinson's or a stroke, whatever the case may be, you just heard about the spinal surgery, the website is neurologic.life. Neurologic.life. Go to the website. All the information is up there, and the folks will be happy to reach out to you and do a demo, get you a suit, whatever you need to do. All right, we'll be right back after the break. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate, broadcasting on the HI Radio Network, coast to coast across the USA. We've got more. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate Show, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA here on the HI Radio Network. You can find out more about us by going to the website, americashealthcareadvocate.com. Our producer, Mr. Darren Wilhite, I'm your host, Kerry Hall. Thank you for joining us again in studio in Florida, joining us by Zoom, DJ Schmidt, CEO and founder of Neuro20, and Michael Finkelstein, co-founder and president of Neuro20. And we're talking about this suit, what it does, the amazing recovery process, and how it speeds up recovery from various injuries, etc. This is a remarkable suit. I've used it. I've demonstrated. I've seen it. It is amazing in what it does. And there's nothing else like it in the marketplace, which is another thing that's very interesting. They really don't have any competition for this because nobody's got anything that is exactly what their model is and does what their model does. So it's very, very different. If you want information on it, if you're a provider of any kind, a chiropractor, if you're an MD, if you're a physical therapist, a holistic medicine, whatever the case may be, and maybe you're just somebody in your family's got Parkinson's or some other issue, go to the website neurologic.life, neurologic.life. They'll be happy to help you. Send them an email, and they'll be happy to chat with you about the suit and how it works, what it costs, and all the rest of it. So let's start off with the big win here. FDA approval. That took a while. Yeah. They don't move with the speed of light, do they, DJ?
No, it's the government.
They don't quite move like the Marine Corps does, do they?
Yeah, they're not an expeditionary unit.
No, they certainly aren't. That's well. But Michael, talk a little bit about the fact that you went through that process. Now it's an FDA approved. That's a big deal. So let's talk a little bit about that, and then let's get into a little more information about inpatient, outpatient, at home, and all the rest of it.
Well, what I'll say is that the professionals at the FDA do a great job at making sure that the public is safe, right? That is their number one job. And they want to make sure that you have everything buttoned up tight as a medical device to meet certain standards, and they're going to ask you all the tough questions. And that's the best part about it, is because, like you said, leading off with the Dyson, vacuum, when they come back with something, you got to problem solve it out and figure it out from an engineering standpoint, right? Like, it's not as simple. You may need to go get more testing on your system. You may need to have, certain, cytotoxic and biocompatible testing and everything imaginable under the sun. And, it's amazing, the professionals, what they make you go through to get this.
But it's for, though it's frustrating and it's a long process, it's for the better.
It is.
You want to make sure that you're using devices. There are devices out there that are not FDA approved.
That's it.
And they're transthoracic. That means they're sending signal across. There's no cytotoxicity. Like, we're happy to go through the FDA process. Is it frustrating? Yes. Is it a big deal? Yes, because that's the first step of validity of the product. When you clear the FDA, you're safe. They tell you what the indications of use are. For example, increased blood flow. So, range of motion. We can provide you more flexible, increasing your range of motion. Muscle disuse atrophy, strength.
Preventing and guarding a muscle spasm.
Yeah, I mean, these are things
it goes on and on.
Yeah, and we have to prove this to the FDA before we can make that claim. So we already have some validity to the product. Now we'll move. Now we have case studies out there, and now we'll move into the bigger clinical trials for more applications.
Exactly, and it's really important that we re-educate the market. DJ says it all the time. Go ahead and say it.
Yeah, but I say, when I talk to a physical therapist, there's so mindset on what EMS has been, we have to re-educate. And that's harder than educating a market with something new, is re-educating them that we've taken science that's been around since BC, and now we're bringing it to the newest technology. So we have to re-educate the market. So I tell them all, you have to take everything off the table about EMS. Electromuscle stimulation, including your patient, because traditionally EMS was a static application. You lay on the table, and they provide you the stimulation. Now it's up and moving. You have a force coupler. You're moving involuntary. You're voluntary with an involuntary contraction, which is a game changer. And we have to re-educate the market.
Yeah, and the first devices that were out there that took the patient off the table, we give honor to them all the time.
Mm-hmm.
The wired ones with the shared vest, that was brilliant that they got them into functional movement. But to do functional movement, you need to be able to go upstairs, or you need to be able to, if you're an athlete, swing or kick a ball. And you can't do that in a wired shared vest system. So that's why we advanced the system the way we did.
It's real world applications.
And there is, I want to reiterate this, I said it in the opening remarks on this segment, there is no other product out there that does what you do the way you do it with Neuro 20, that can isolate a specific muscle group, that can program it this or program it that way. And we'll talk about this in the last segment of the show, that is actually billable back, paid by insurance carriers across the board. And we'll talk about that at the end. But I really want to emphasize here, these things, range of motion. One of the things that we talk about in Pilates all the time is that core strength and range of motion. I'm 73 years old. That's a big damn deal, okay, as you age, okay?
Absolutely.
And if you get injured, you break a hip. I just went downstairs and met with the general manager of Odyssey Broadcasting. She's talking about her husband having 5 surgeries to replace a hip replacement they had to do, and it's been hell on earth, okay, that he's gone through. Well, again, this is the kind of thing where the Neuro 20 comes in and can make a huge difference on rehab and give people an opportunity to recover as you have, DJ, and as you have, Michael, because you both used it, make 100% recovery. And that's not an exaggeration. That's a fact.
Yeah, basically, patient outcome is the key. That's the number one thing, is we have better patient outcome. One of the reasons what really defines us and makes us different that nobody else can do is our patterned electrical muscle stimulation. This fires the complete motor chain of a specific movement within microseconds. So instead of going first order, second order, third order, which is brain, spine, muscle, we contract within microseconds the exact movement pattern of the muscle for specific movements.
Yeah. So if you think about it, if I were to be rehabbing and I need to learn how to stand like this and then sit back down again, think of every muscle involved in that movement and how quick the brain sends a signal to that muscle to fire to do that movement, microseconds. We can repeat those microsecond patterns now to every single one of those muscles through the suit. And we do those contractions involuntarily while the patient struggles to voluntarily do it themselves. We're going to do it assistive and give them an involuntary support to do it. And we can do that for all kinds of movements.
And we're going to keep continuing to build those movements out and update our software and firmware. We're constantly, now we're working just for a simple reach and return to grab a cup of coffee and bring it back for people who are limited from stroke recovery, Parkinson's, stabilizing the muscle to help keep, it's about a quality of life. We're not a cure for anything. We are a way to have a better quality of life for muscular injuries and diseases.
Yeah, the injuries we can help certainly heal quicker.
Yeah, so, and let's talk about that for a minute. So, you have something like this hip surgery, and the recovery time from those things is brutal, okay? Right. It's painful, it's brutal, all the rest of it. Well, we just talked about this in a previous segment. So now, you can't work out, you can't do the things you used to do. You can put this Neuro 20 suit on and rehab and speed up the rehab in that situation and cut that time down significantly from what it would typically take to go through a standard physical therapy. Am I right or wrong, DJ?
You're right.
Spot
on. That's
on.
exactly what our case study showed.
Patient outcome. That's really no matter what we say, patient outcome is better. Post-surgery, pre-surgery, post-injury, the patient outcome is significantly better.
I don't want to brush over what he just said on the pre-surgery there. So what surgeons are finding, and if you talk to surgeons, which I'm sure you do, when you talk to surgeons, prehabilitation is the big thing right now, where they're putting interventions in place prior to surgery to find better outcomes post-surgery.
Yeah, they are. That's a big deal.
And so this suit is a prehab device that they can use before the surgery. Then they get the surgery, and then they put it on and use it differently for rehabilitation.
So just so everybody gets what they're talking about here. So surgeries are being delayed now, sometimes 6 months, sometimes 90 days, and maybe you're having a hip replacement surgery, and the surgeon says, well, you're going to have to lose 20 pounds, and I want to see you do the following things before I'm willing to do that surgery. Okay, what we're hearing here, okay, what you're listening to from DJ and from Michael is that the Neuro 20 can accelerate that process and help you get through it and make you stronger so that when you go have the surgery, you come back out, you're in a completely different shape than you would normally be, and you put the suit back on and you recover quicker. Is that about
exactly right?
Yeah.
Full cycle.
And that's what's really important here. You know, I don't put these kinds of products and do these kind of shows unless I think there's a reason here that this can help you. My wife's got one of these suits, okay? I mean, I believe in this product. I know it works. I've seen what it does. If you're a physician, if you're a physical therapist, and you heard DJ say this, wipe everything you think you know about electromuscular stimulation off the table. This is different. And if you want to learn how different it is, go to the website neurologic.life. Neurologic.life. All the information is up there, and you can watch the videos, understand it, reach out to them. They'll be happy to connect with you. When we come back from the break now, we're going to close the loop and talk about how, if you are a medical professional, you can bill for this using CPT codes and all the rest of it. So stay tuned. We've got more. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate, broadcasting here on the HI Radio Network, coast to coast across the USA. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate Show, broadcasting coast to coast across the fruited plain here on the HI Radio Network. You can find out more about us by going to the website americashealthcareadvocate.com. If you have a question, comment, or concern, you need help with something, send me an email. I'll be happy to help you. All right. My producer, Darren Wilhite, I'm your host, Kerry Hall. Joining me from Florida today, DJ Schmidt, CEO and founder of Neuro 20, and Michael Finkelstein, co-founder and president of Neuro 20. We're talking about the Neuro 20 suit. Remember I told you it looks like a wetsuit. They held it up earlier in the broadcast. It looks like a wetsuit. It's got a little computer gizmo that clips on the side, about the size of a pack of cigarettes back in the day. And that goes on to an iPad where you can literally program this thing to do any muscle group or all muscle groups, depending on how you want to use it. You can use it for all of those things. If you are a therapist, if you're a physical therapist, if you're an MD, if you're a nurse practitioner, any of these people, and you're doing any kind of rehab work, maybe you're working with stroke patients, whatever the case may be, go to the website neurologic.life, neurologic.life. All the information is up there on the Neuro 20. The folks there will be happy to reach out to you, get you a demonstration, and show you how all of this works. So we've had this is interesting. Now that we've gotten through the FDA process and all the rest of it, now, and this is important for providers listening, it's billable on CPT codes. So let's talk about that, where and how that application lets them go back to the insurance carriers. So those of you that are pedestrian out there listening to this, and maybe you want to go see a physician that's using it, your insurance will cover it. Okay, that's part of what we're talking about. So talk about that, Michael and DJ, and how that works now.
Well, I'm going to let Mike lead this. I'm going to let you know we do qualify for CPT codes.
Right.
We are working on additional DME, durable medical equipment codes, and remote telemedicine, remote monitoring, basically. But I'll let Mike get into details because that's his wheelhouse, and I know what I don't know.
Okay,
so
good.
Off the Mike.
A perfect CEO, right?
Yeah.
All right. So, so there's the 97,000 code series. So what we did is we went out and we had a reimbursement landscape done by a very reputable medical provider consulting company out of DC. They're very well known. They did a full reimbursement landscape on the product. But you have to be FDA cleared to be able to do any of that, right?
Right.
So you get that down, now we can go to insurance. So the neuromuscular re-education codes, the 97,000 codes, apply to our suit. And the beautiful thing is that Medicare has a rule where you have to do 15 minutes of a particular program. It's actually 8 minutes is the cutoff because it's one more than half, where they will allow you to bill for that. So because of the way our system works, you can run multiple programs. You can have somebody in like a gait re-education muscle pattern or a strength pattern, stop them after 8 minutes and switch it to, say, massage mode or switch it to strength mode and run multiple programs within a single patient session and then stack those codes accordingly. So now you're stacking the codes and are able to do that. And then so it's great. There's also a G code for electrical muscle stimulation that you could add on as a tack on. And generally the private payers are paying for this. The insurance companies accept the Medicare codes for the most part. And then, you might run into something here and there, but for the most part they do. And then that's what we apply for now when you're in the office. The next step is to apply to Medicare for our own unique code, or to state that, or for Medicare to say, hey, these products out there with these insurance codes, you can apply for those for at-home use, because the FDA cleared us for at-home use.
That's wonderful. And I'm going to go back to that real quick, because I've said to people, if you're dealing, look, I've got a very good friend whose father-in-law has significant Parsons. He's one of the first people I'm sending this broadcast out to for a link, because he could use that at home. So let's get into that at home a little bit more.
It's really important. So again, your provider's still going to tell you to go use it at home, and they're going to say use it, say 2 times a week or 3 times a week, for X amount of minutes on whatever programs. And the provider's going to get paid to train you how to use it. There's a code for that. And then the provider can come on, if they want, they can come in through Zoom, just like we're doing right here, and they can direct you through Zoom while you control the system at home and give you exercises and tell you what to do. And they can build those RTM codes, which are very valuable to a provider.
Okay, so we've got about 2 minutes left here, so I want to go back to one thing. If somebody is out there and they want to do this at home themselves, they don't want to go through a doctor. I watched this. I went to the website. I went to neurologic.life, and I think I want to do this. It is safe for them to do it. They can be trained on how to do it. It's not. What I'm trying to get across here is this isn't rocket science, and it could make a big difference. Again, I'm going to use Parkinson's because I keep going back to my friend whose father-in-law's got Parkinson's. So they could reach out and they could learn how to use this on the computer in the whole 9 yards and be trained in how to use it. Is that correct or incorrect, DJ?
They do have to go through a doctor, a nurse practitioner, chiropractor. Somebody like that has to go through to actually provide them the equipment. It's not an over-the-counter device.
No, I know that. Neurologic.
Their doctor, they can go to them and say, yeah, I want it. The doctor can send us a letter saying, yes, I've looked at your technology. I approved it. I'll monitor them, and then we can send it direct to the patient.
So I'm speaking to you people out there, direct, okay, that are, if you want to do this, if you go to neurologic.life, I'll get it right here, they'll connect you with a medical provider that can in fact do this, and then they will train you on how to use this for that specific issue, correct, whatever it may be. So, but it is available. That's the point I'm trying to make. Some people may not want to go through a whole, if you want to go direct and try to do this yourself and put it together, you think there's a need for it, we'll teach you how to do it, and we'll give you the benefits of it and how it works, so it can be done. All right, so before we wrap it up here, let's go back through who the providers you typically that are typically interested in this. Michael, DJ?
So physical therapists, occupational therapists, rehabilitation specialists, all the surgeons, neurosurgeon, orthosurgeon. Obviously, they want better outcomes for their patients. Spinal surgery.
So orthopedic practices should be looking at this.
Absolutely. Orthopedic practices, neurological practices, so neurologists, anybody who's in the surgical space, so to speak. Even plastic surgeons have even contacted us. Podiatrists.
Think about this way. The surgeons are seeing people on a regular basis after post-surgery. If we can shorten that recovery time a little bit, that lets the surgeon have more time in the operating room. That gives them more time in the operating room.
Yeah.
And let's be real. That's where the surgeons make their money.
Yeah, it is.
They want to be in the operating room when they can, because that's where they make their money.
So
and that's and physiatrists, and we have a medical team.
Yeah, we do. We've got Dr. Frank Palermo, who's one of the most renowned physiatrists in the country. So, guys, we're running up on the end of the show here. Thank you both for doing this very much. I greatly appreciate it. Once again, people, as I said, I don't put these kinds of things on the air unless I believe in it and I know it works. This product works. If you want information, neurologic.life, neurologic.life. And now I leave you with this thought from Albert Einstein. The one who follows the crowd usually get no further than the crowd. The one who walks alone is likely to find himself in places no one has ever been. Remember, friends, it's a funny thing about life. If you refuse to accept anything but the very best, you most often get it. Thank you for listening to America's Healthcare Advocate, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA. Goodbye, America.